Hello and welcome to Full-Time Live on the Fulhamish YouTube channel, Twitter account and Facebook page. Thanks for joining. I need to probably change these scorers, don't I? But you know, this is what happens when I don't actually do things properly before I start. But you know, as you can see, there we go. You see, this it's like a live podcast now. You see me making all my mistakes before I do a thing like this. But there we go. Bosh, there we go. All back to normal. But yeah, this is Full-Time Live after, Fulham's 2-0 loss. I mean, that just summarises today. You know, me not even putting the score on the screen properly here. But yeah, Fulham lost 2-0 to Leicester City today. I don't think it's a surprising result, but the performance didn't really offer us much to talk about here. Obviously, I'm joined today by Dara Curran.
Hello, everyone.
And Nathan Martin.
Hello.
Yeah, if we're going to... I don't really know where to start with that, but, the best place to always start is obviously with the team lineup. I'll go to you first, Nath. Did you really have any thoughts of the lineup, or was it as expected? Obviously, we saw, Bobby Reid not playing. And
I was kind of surprised about Bobby getting dropped because Leicester are a bit quick. I don't know how y'all feel. I just, I struggle to care right now because of that. It's like it sort of all feels like... water under the bridge, just like it doesn't really matter. You're rearranging chairs on the Titanic. I mean, I looked at the lineup and I'm like, could be a good performance. We could have some, maybe we'll create some things. Nothing, I'm obviously happy to see Cav dropped again. And then, we looked bright for the first few minutes. It looked like maybe we actually had a chance, and that quickly ended.
Yeah, Dara. I mean, if we just look at the game before the goal sort of came, we started fairly brightly. We had probably the lion's share of possession. We didn't have any clear cut chances, but we did have a chance to score goals. Loftus-Cheek, Mitrovic. I remember before, obviously Maddison whipped the ball in for Iheanacho for their first goal. But we started the game brightly, but that was probably our best spell in the game.
Yeah, we tend to do that actually against United. Again, we started brightly and we got the early goal. Our pressing was quite good early days, and then it just kind of dropped off, and Maddison just ran the show. I don't know, just overall, we just didn't really do, we just didn't do anything really. It's just getting it forward. Like if you're going to play 5 at the back, the wing backs, you need to get it wide and utilize those wing backs, and we just didn't do that enough today. Because Mitro's in the center, and for all the possession we had, we did nothing with it. There's Mitrovic sitting there, not like how many crosses did we put in? I don't remember too many. Robinson got down the left maybe once or twice in the whole game, and those are our best moments of the game.
Yeah, and I think we were speaking before, and it was like talking about the game. There isn't really too much to say because it was so drab. I mean, yes, we saw Mitrovic start, and I know Bobby Reid needed a rest, but I said it before the game that I would have rested Anguissa because I think ever since he's come back from, he was reportedly one of the ones who had COVID, and so and he's looked gassed ever since. But he did start the game brightly. But the thing was, as soon as Leicester scored, obviously, if we look at that goal, I tweeted it that I don't think you can really criticise us for it. I know Anguissa loses the ball, but and then obviously people are arguing that the two, I think it's Tosin and Anderson should have arguably done better watching Iheanacho's run. But my thinking here is that I don't think they're expecting James Maddison to whip the ball in as early as he does. And he has the whip he gets on it, and it's an absolute peach of a ball. He puts it in the perfect place. And for a striker who runs off the back line like Iheanacho, like the way Leicester play, they do it with Jamie Vardy as well. I think that there's no criticism really on that goal from a Fulham perspective. But I did feel like once that goal went in, we know what we're like when coming from behind. I think the only point we've got this season coming from behind is against Spurs. I want to say, and even last season in the Championship, we rarely did come from behind to win games. So once that goal went in, it sort of felt like not necessarily normality was restored, but it felt like that, there's a reason this Leicester team are in the top 4 and they even could potentially be pushing for the title.
Yeah, Dom, whatever this chap's name is, Gaza Dexy 40 is saying lots of huff and puff and no creativity. And I think that's probably a really good, kind of has summed up the last few weeks or the last few performances for Fulham. It's just we pressed hard, we worked hard. Parker has everyone. There we go. Parker has everyone, pressing and doing well. But I think this is also where I completely agree with you. I think, Anguissa is not at 100%. I think he could be, suffering from some after effects of COVID if he had it. But like we depended on him to, like in the first Leicester game, to create that beautiful, through ball that releases Bobby and opens things up, or excuse me, releases Lookman. And Anguissa's game is just not quite there. He had the ball picked off of him a few times, and he's okay, but he's not that sort of rampaging creative player. And if you don't have Kearney, pairing up with him, we have nothing in the center of the pitch that really creates anything. We can sort of just move the ball around, and Robinson lost that one there. But yeah, I don't think we have the creativity. And then you see on the flip side what creativity can do, because Leicester had done very little up to that point, and James Maddison, just tore us apart in the first half, and that's why he's worth every penny of the £20 million that Leicester paid for him.
Yeah, and I think what today's shown, I know we beat these guys in the reverse fixture, but I think that is a totally different Leicester team to this Leicester team you have now. I think that Leicester team had lost quite a few of their home games, or they dropped points. I think they lost to Newcastle, is one that sort of sticks in my memory previous to our win there. But and this Leicester team is and it works that this Leicester team is a team, once take the lead, they don't really surrender it too much. And then when we go behind, we don't tend to get back into games. I think the reason we got the point against Spurs is because Mourinho's tactics allowed us into it. And Brendan Rodgers isn't a manager who's going to allow that. He did want to kill that game in the first half. And when I was speaking to Matt Piper on the preview on the Fulhamish YouTube channel, he was saying the same thing, that, that's what Brendan Rodgers will want to do. He won't want to repeat of the previous game where, obviously Lookman went ahead fairly early on in that first half. And they did sort of, they killed the game just at the end of the second half. Dara, looking at the second goal, do you again think it's just great play from Maddison and Justin to obviously make the darting run? Or do you think there are areas in that goal we could have done better?
It kind of looks a bit calamitous at the end. I'm not sure. There's probably areas that we could have prevented it, but I don't know. Once the first went in, I'd kind of given up at that stage. I think
most did. I think most did. I mean, I've said it on the podcast. I've said it on Twitter multiple times now. Like, I can't stand watching this on TV. It's really frustrating, because at least at a game, if it's me, if we concede on the 25 minutes mark, I'm going down to the concourse.
Would you, Dom, would you have come out? I asked you this in the group, but would you have even come out for the second half, or would you have just left the park and gone to the line?
I probably
stayed in the concourse.
What I probably would have said is, obviously I would have gone down for a pint after 25 minutes or whatever, and then I probably would have given the second half 5-10 minutes. And then if we conceded in that 5-10 minute spell to make it 3-0, I probably would have gone to the Cedar Tree, the Lion, the Bedford, wherever I was drinking that day, and then gone from there. But I probably would have gone back up and be like, why have I come back up? But this is the thing, and it's also that going to a live game. It's just somewhere where you can, if you're pissed off, you can just shout at the team. And at home, it's just watching it on TV. It's just, I don't know how people who support from abroad, or don't go week in, week out. I don't know how they do it. I couldn't do that all my time supporting Fulham, because it's just it's just infuriating. We could have been
3-0 down if Areola hadn't made a couple saves. Like he had a couple saves. He threw himself at that. That strike. I mean, we didn't deserve to be in it. And that second goal, I think you can fault a few players for just getting beat by their individual men. But I mean, it was some class. It was a class play by Leicester. Everybody makes the nice run. Justin just dances in. But I mean, yeah.
The one thing that stood out to me in that was, if you watch it back, Adebayo, he's coming in behind Justin, and he just stops his run. He kind of just gives up on it, and then Justin goes around Areola, and by that stage, he tries to make a sprint to get back, and he probably would have blocked it on the line, I think, if he kept running.
There's a point here from Toby saying Harrison Reed being our most consistent performer, and I think he's probably right here, because if you look at, we had the draws, but if you're looking since the start of January, where obviously we've lost to Chelsea, we've lost to United, now we've lost to us. This is probably across the 90 minutes the dullest and worst we've played, because I know we played terribly in the first 20-25 minutes, half hour that game, or second half against West Brom, but in that first half it's some of the best football we've probably played this season. I know West Brom allowed us to do that, But Harrison Reed, since especially recently in the last sort of 6 weeks or so, I guess we could say he's definitely been our most consistent player. I think in the middle of the park he's been great. As I said I would have rested Anguissa today. I would have played Reed and Lamina, and a few people have mentioned it. I'll see if I can find one of the comments, or maybe it's not. People have been mentioning it me on Twitter. Is that do you guys think it's time we ditch the 5 at the back? Do you think it's time, because the defensive solidity doesn't seem to be there at the moment. We can see the 4 goals in 2 games in these games. Obviously, we can see the 2 against United and 1 against Chelsea as well. And we don't look like scoring, and we need to get more players further forward. It's not like we haven't got good attacking players here. We've got Adamola Lookman, we've got Mitrovic, Loftus-Cheek. I don't really want to speak about him, but we know there's ability there. Cavallero, he's played well up there at points, but he has been very frustrating. But there is ability up there, if you're canning it back into this team. And, if you've got 3 in midfield, it will allow someone like Anguissa to make these runs. And we'll still have the fullbacks bombing on in the likes of Robinson and Tete or whoever's playing there. I'll go to you first, Nathan. Do you think it's time we switch this to a 4-3-3 or 4-2-3-1?
And let's really quick before we do the formation. I've seen this show up in the comments a few times about Maja, like why he didn't play tonight, why he wasn't in the lineup, Josh King. And I think someone said this in our chat earlier. In a kind of Fulhamish group chat, it's because of when the transfer was completed. King was, I think it's when he arrived, when it was registered, and so he couldn't be in the lineup tonight. So that just as an FYI. I completely agree. We need to shift things up. I think particularly when we were going against some of the top sides, you're going against Liverpool, start 5 at the back. I love that sort of like, let's just be a bit savvy about it. And that's what Slav didn't do when we went up in the Premier League. That makes total sense. When you're playing West Brom, like there's no need for that. And at some point, I think part of the problem as well is that we're just not getting that creativity in the midfield. We need some other players. You put someone like Harrison Reed who can hoover things up and do what he does, but you need someone to help provide some creativity to open things up. Because right now we look absolutely just sort of dearth, like no ideas when we're coming through there.
Yeah, Dara, what do you think? Do you think it's just time we need to start the game playing a 4-3-3, 4-2-3? Because especially when we're playing teams on our level as such. So obviously the upcoming games against Palace and Sheffield United, which are coming in the next month or so. We saw in the second half against West Brom, once we changed to a 4 at the back, we were creating chances. So obviously a game against Leicester is always going to be tough. I know the commentators are harking on our one here like 50 years or whatever, but I mean, this is a team who are in a title race this season. If you're looking at it, they are a very, very good team, as they showed today with the quality of both their goals. Do you think it is time? Although it got us the draws back in November and December, it's time we switched back to a 4 at the back to really start creating chances for this team.
Yeah, I think we've kind of got 2 systems depending on what our opposition is, but definitely against the teams that are in and around us, I think we should be playing 4 at the back. I don't really think the 5 at the back suits Mitrovic at all. So I think Scott's maybe kind of got a bit mixed up tonight by playing 5 at the back and Mitrovic, because I think there's just not enough players in and around him. He tends to get very
football manager sort of FIFA mode. Like like we're going to mix and match everything that we like and try to make it work together.
But I think you need somebody, if you're going to play like a 4-2-3-1, you can have somebody just operating in behind Mitrovic that he can like chest the ball down to or hold it up and lay it off to. And
this point you make about Mitrovic
or whoever, but
Dara is a point is not necessarily a point, but it's Eddie Milbrook here talking about Rooney lost his cheek, about not having the quality, and he looks to take the fall every time he has the ball. Do you think I've said it, that Loftus-Cheek often looks better when Mitrovic is on the pitch, but do you think if we are going to play Mitrovic, then we don't play Loftus-Cheek, because you're better off with a front 3 of Mitrovic down the middle, Lookman on the left, and on the right hand side you can either have Cavallero or Bobby Reed. It would just, for me, it would just seem to make a lot more sense. I feel like at times Mitrovic and Loftus-Cheek, they're not, although Loftus-Cheek has looked better sometimes when Mitrovic has come on as a substitute, I feel like that those two just don't complement each other. If you've got Mitrovic, you want 2 wide men who've got a bit of pace about them, Nathan.
Yeah, my concern is just that I don't, we've seen this show up a few times, is that I'm not convinced Scotty knows how to set up a attacking side to sort of get the best out of this 11. And we've seen him be able to build from the back and build a solid defensive side. But there were times tonight where both Mitrovic and RLC were literally running to the same spot. And that just killed me. There was that one time where Ruben was offside and, they took forever to raise the flag. And you got Mitro not running to the middle to get ready for the cross, which is what he should be doing. He's running over there for that ball. And it's just like a lack of coaching, a lack of, tactics. And I think this is particularly what shows the second time you go through the Premier League, right? Like, you play these teams twice. First time you might be able to catch someone like Leicester off, but Brendan Rodgers is a hell of a manager. He knows what he's doing. He's been criminally underrated under the years, and he came out prepared for us, even with an understrength side. Like, let's remember, this is a Leicester side that were missing some key components.
Yeah, they didn't have Vardy, no Ndidi, no Castagne, no Wesley Fofana.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
That's four or five key starts for them.
Exactly. And they looked absolutely comfortable tonight and no problems. And I think that's part of the problem, is that Scott figured out one thing that worked okay and it worked well. And let's give him credit for that. But if you're going to really unpack these sides and unpick these sides, then you have to have more in your box of tactics and tricks than two moves. We play with Mitrovic, or we play this pressing Lookman up top and Cavallero. We don't have that right now, and it just kills me.
Yeah, a point here that's been made by Sam is, Parker not showing this attacking nous for 2 years as a coach now, as he stated here, about sticking or twisting. There's a point that, people have been talking about, especially the last few games, about Scott Parker and whether he is the right man for the job, because, he has shored up he has done well with defensive stability that he instilled in the last 2 months, but there's only so much you can pinpoint on recruitment. I know the signings came too late in the summer, but the signings that we did make, apart from probably Loftus-Cheek, have worked this season. Do you think there is probably getting to a point now, Dara, where criticism is going to start coming Scott Parker's way? He can't. I'm not saying he's going to portion the blame on the Tony Khan. I'm not saying that, but there is going to come a point where people just aren't going to be Tony Khan out, whereas actually people are going to start saying, "Hang on, could another manager be doing a better job here?"
I don't know what the tactics were tonight. I know Scott likes to work on the finer details of the game, if you will. But I didn't see those key moments. I didn't see those at all tonight. I mean, you either stay compact and sit deep and surrender a little bit of possession and catch Leicester on the break, or you utilize Mitro and the wing backs and you whip balls into the box. Like, Infogol put up a stat before the game, and Leicester were second for teams that were conceding expected goals against. They had a 0.42 goals against, just behind Leeds. This is from corners and set pieces. So why didn't we get more? And
you saw that. You saw that with the Tosin, right? Tosin was wide open.
Exactly, but we didn't do that. So if if they'd done their homework, we might have exploited that a little bit more, but we didn't.
Yeah, and I want to jump in there, Dom, to say as well, like, what kills me is like I think Scott deserves a lot of credit in terms of like what he's done with the players. He's a great manager. I actually think he may have just gotten promoted a little bit too soon. He got us up in the championship last year, but let's be honest. The side that we gave him in the championship, the side that Tony and them gave him, should get up. Like, that side was stacked.
Well, talent, any manager would be deemed a failure. He didn't get that team up.
With that and still almost didn't get up.
Yeah,
right?
and a big point to make is, obviously, when we came back from lockdown and Project Restart, with the whole of everything restarting again, when we lost those opening 2 games to Brentford and Leeds United, there were big calls whether Scott Parker's the right man here, because there was a stage there where people were looking behind us saying, we've got a chance if we don't sort our act together or finishing outside the top 6 altogether. So it's not this isn't the first time, for example, in Scott Parker's reign where people have been questioning him. But now the way I'm looking at it is, I 100% agree that there will be managers who can do a better job than Scott Parker is currently doing now. And, I have sung Scott Parker's praises because I was expecting him to build on this, but he simply hasn't done that. He built the foundations and just left the foundations.
Yeah. And I think it's just he's young, man.
I'm not. Yeah, he's an inexperienced manager. You know, This is what his first full season in the Premier League. His first full season as an actual manager last season. But my thing is, it's great that he built this defensive solidity. It's great. We've mentioned it, but there comes a point where you need to build on it, and he hasn't done that. We've got the draws, but we've still only won 2 games all season long. Sheffield United have won more games. If we look at this season 2 seasons ago, when we went down, we won 7 games that season. Can you see us winning another 5 games a season?
No.
Because I can't.
No, and I think here's the thing as well. It's like we've never had a glimpse of what is Parker ball. Parker ball is draws, and maybe you nick a win, right? Like our best performance of the year, is arguably the Leicester game. We had a couple counterattacks, hit people in the counterattack, but we've never had a cohesive sense of offense. And it's worth remembering, let's go back to the championship. We never looked like a cohesive side in the championship. We would score goals. We had players of individual moments of brilliance.
The only time we looked like a brilliant
the Millwall game
was the Millwall game.
Yeah.
The rest of the wins. How many games did we win by 1 goal?
Right, and how many games do we throw? Or we have like really late winners or whatever might happen. That's why the side that we have right now. Part of me is I'm kind of thinking I'm already like accepting we're gonna go to the championship, and I look at the side and I'm like, actually, you know what? I think that's a really solid, because the championship you need those big players in the back. We've got good players we could build. But I'm not convinced that we have an offensive sort of mindset that would consistently score.
I think when it comes to going back down to the championship, it's not something we should be putting huge emphasis on, because obviously we're not mathematically down, but it looks like it's very likely. I think we're 7 points off to draw. I know, because for me, games in hand mean nothing, because you either have the points or you don't. Like it's no, some people look at games in hand, oh, they get 3 points, but that isn't how games in hand work. And for me, you're looking at it was fine last season because it was, we had this, but these players are getting, Adoy, Johansson, Tim Ream, Kearney, McDonald, all these players, they're getting on now, and they're not going to be able to come in and just do the same job. And I'm not saying we won't, if we go down, we won't come straight back up, but there's a point here, and there's loads of points being made, obviously, about the recruitment strategy. Daniel Webb here saying, wish you got Wilson or Watkins in. Obviously, we were linked with both at the time, and we were linked fairly close to these guys at one point, and look how they're doing. Callum Wilson, as I think, is in double digits now for Newcastle, and considering them, they don't seem to create anything. Callum Wilson being double, it's very good for them. Watkins has slotted straight in at Aston Villa. We've been talking about Parker. If we move on to the recruitment in Tony Khan, do you think it's 2 transfer windows now where the only striker he's got in has been Josh Maja on loan from Bordeaux? Do you think it is 50-50 between Parker and the recruitment with Tony Khan, or do you think it is swaying more one way than the other, Dara?
It's hard to know. I'm sure Parker's identified certain characteristics in the players that he wants. But if you watch the Tony Khan interview from the other day, pretty much he basically said that we're skint and like
we don't have
the money.
Whose fault is it?
Well, that was from the first season, not from last.
Whose fault is it that we're in an issue with financial fair play? Because surely that comes down to deals that Tony Khan is striking.
Yeah.
And it's when he first took the job, we had the transfer ban. So for me, for him to come, it did kind of feel like that he was answering questions that he handed on a sheet to an interviewer. It kind of felt
it was a bit weird.
There was basically things he wanted to say. For me, it wasn't an interview. It was essentially a statement with questions scripted for an interviewer.
Yeah, but kind of dragged on as well, like that.
Yeah, and so
it was just like, okay, we'll wrap it up there.
If we're trying to comply with financial fair play, it's your job to make sure we can get the players we need to get in for us to be in line with financial fair play. And for him the only striker for him to get in the windows being Josh Maja on deadline day in January, when we've needed one since the end of last season, because whenever Mitrovic came back from that injury, when we saw him in the playoff final, he hasn't looked the same. Obviously, he hasn't scored since, I think, September against Leeds United, I want to say. So it is, I think, if I'm portioning the blame, I'm probably going to go 65 on Khan, 35 on Parker, because I think Parker, up until the last month or so, has done a good job. I think since January, we haven't improved on that, but Tony Khan could have done better. I know there's certain deals, like the Anderson deal, probably doesn't happen if it doesn't happen on deadline day. Obviously, Josh King chose Everton, obviously, over us. I mean, if you had the two to choose in a certain situation, you're going to choose Everton because they're chasing for European football. So yeah, and I think it is there is people who will solely put it on Khan. I think Parker's doing the best he can, but I think it is I think it is slightly in Tony Khan's favour of who's cost us more by not signing the players. But I do think Parker now. I think if you said this in November, December, you'd put it like 90% on Khan, 10% on Parker. But nowadays, I think or especially in the last week, it is coming for that Parker definitely can be doing better with his squad.
And let's be honest, part of it as well is like it's immaturity, right? We've got immaturity on both sides of the table. Everyone talks about Tony's immaturity. He's an idiot on Twitter at times. We love him or hate him, depending on who you are. We kind of equally split in the comment section right now. But the reality is Tony doesn't have tons of experience as a director of football, if at all, right? And on the flip side, Scott doesn't have a ton of experience as a manager. And so you have two people who are both coming to the limits of what they actually can achieve with this sort of things. And so Tony, we can give him crap for some of the things he hasn't made, but he's made some really good signings. Tosin, our back line, Robinson, etc. Areola was a genius, move and has kept us in that. So you have to give Tony credit on that side. But Tony is also at limits of the thing that I don't think gets enough credit is the wage bill and the sort of like some of the contracts and things that mean that we are a bit strapped, right? Like you always see the transfer fee of how much it costs to bring someone in. But there's sort of other factors that are at play there. And Tony has definitely got hung out to dry on that side. But Scott has not I'm sorry, I'm not giving Tony a free pass, but Scott has got to do better with it. I mean, the performance against Burnley, the second half against West Brom, the performance tonight, those aren't Tony's fault. Like Tony is not in the locker room with the players getting ready to walk out the pitch and telling him what to do. And looking at the players and the talent that we have in that side, there's only one person that has to carry that. And I love Scott. I think he's got tremendous potential, but I'm just not sure if he's ready. I think he got promoted a bit too quickly. He was lucky to be in at the right time with the shit show that was Ranieri, and Scott came in, steadied the ship. That's great. Still take him over Frank Lampard.
Yeah, Dara, I made this point on the podcast, obviously on Sunday, and obviously it went out on Monday morning. We've got the same amount of points after 21 games as we did 2 years ago. And you argue this is obviously a better squad. We're seeing a lot better performances. But I know we probably at points have probably felt more engaged with this team. But if you're comparing them, they've got the same amount of points. If you're comparing them, this team won 7 games. I know, they came when Scott Parker came in and you have got a new manager bounce kind of thing. But when do you think now, after especially a result like this, is when people are maybe accepting that this Fulham team doesn't quite have the potential and the heights that we thought it did in November and December?
I wouldn't necessarily knock it on the head. I think we just need to work on getting the ball from the final third. Just that final third, we can get there. We can pass it all around for as much as we want. Like, look at the amount of possession that we had tonight. We did nothing with it, and we did this last season as well when we were like against Charlton, against Millwall last season. We did nothing when we had the possession. I don't know. Like maybe we need some other sort of coach to come in, and some attacking coach who's it's just not clicking. It's not working for us.
Did you see I like JDM also had the point that we're the 11th highest wage budget in the league, right? Like I know you can fault the Cons for a lot of things, and I accept that. And I'm an American. I'm not trying to but I'm like, they are putting the money into maybe it's not being done intelligently, but that's a lot of money to spend on a side that's doing as poorly.
I think with the Cons, it's not that they're not investing; they're just not investing it wisely. Yeah. Because this will be the third season of Premier League, and it'll be their third relegation. Although Tony, as I said, as I've said on the podcast, as a Tony Khan clearly wants us to be a yo-yo club, as what he came in and said. I mean, I don't remember the last time Fulham were probably a yo-yo club. Half people who are watching this, or half people who do Fulhamish, probably weren't born. It would have been the 70s or 80s, because we weren't a yo-yo club in the 90s, were we? We were in the depths of second and third division, nearly falling out of the Football League, and then made our way into the Premier League under Mohamed Al Fayed. And so if we're going to wrap this up, because I think we've covered the game, we've covered the main issues that people are going to talk. Who's to blame? Parker, Tony Khan, where we stand on it. But obviously, for me, I think we're gone, just because we've won 2 games all season. We've played West Brom twice and Brighton twice, who are 2 of the teams you could argue we're in a relegation battle with. And what have we got? 5 points out of 12. If you include Newcastle in that, that's 6 points out of 15. Include Palace in that, that's 6 points out of 18. So we're getting to it. We're just not picking up points against teams around us, and we don't look like picking up points against the teams who as I said, who are around us. So we don't look like picking up points against teams who we could surprise against. I know we got the win against Leicester, and we got points against Tottenham and Liverpool, but we don't look like winning games. And I think that's the biggest issue. I think that's the biggest point to leave it on, because I think that's what most Fulham fans would agree on, is that
there's no goals there.
Yeah, there's no goals. We don't look like doing enough to win games. If we're going to win games, it's going to be 1-0. It's going to be 2-1 maximum. We don't look like a team who's going to score 3 goals in a game. I don't think Leeds is probably the only game we've done that this season.
We looked like in the first half against West Brom that we looked like we were going to score 5, and then we just couldn't string together 90 minutes.
You talk about the first half, but West Brom just allowed us the freedom of the Hawthorns, the freedom of the Black Country in that game. So I don't think there's too much to go. But we'll end it on that point that, for me personally, I don't know if you guys agree, but for me, it looks like just simply too much work at the moment to keep Fulham in this league. I don't know if you agree, Dara.
I don't. Obviously, we have to do our own share and get the results, but like, there's other teams. Every time we look like, oh yeah, these guys are going through a bad result, like a Newcastle or Crystal Palace, and they fucking pull like 2 wins out of the bag in a row or something.
Sheffield United go to Old Trafford and pick up 3 points.
Well, I've said this actually. I haven't like said it on a public platform, but I've been saying it to like people that arguably, if you look at the bottom 3 right now, you could argue the team who looks most likely to get out of it could potentially be Sheffield United.
Yeah.
They've won the most games out of the teams there. They've won 2 games in fairly recent succession. So you can argue if they get on a run of things, and we notice the squad's got ability. They're finishing the top half last season. So if anyone's going to get, you can argue them. But I think we'll leave it on that point. So this has been full-time live for Fulham's 2-0 defeat to Leicester, as it does say. As I forgot to do at the beginning, but that summarises today. That I forgot to change the score from 0-0 after I set up before the game. But all I've got to say is thank you very much to Dara Curran.
Cheers.
Very much to Nathan Martin. This has been Fulhamish full-time live on the Facebook page, Twitter account, and YouTube channel. We'll see you guys next time. You Whites.